This is Kende Olateru, right? Yeah, he's a digital entrepreneur and co-founder of Krenet Tech Lab. Thank you very much for joining us this morning.
Thank you.
But first of all, your quick word on this whole digital economy conversation.
Okay, thank you for having me this morning. So digital economy, like what my colleague said, it's basically all activities, transactions, and economy that takes place using digital technologies, basically.
So something like this.
Yeah, so like you said, it's an entire ecosystem, and there's different value chain. And
I was concerned about the skills needed to take it all on. You have been around for a bit, and I understand that you have hosted quite a number of international moguls when it comes to digital platforms that are being used in this whole digital economy ecosystem. Do you think the Nigerian has the skill or the skills necessary?
So do we have the skill? No, but we have the potential. Nigeria has one of the highest population of young people in Africa, and which is primarily a major advantage for us. And the average Nigerian young person is willing to learn, is willing to adapt. But we have the infrastructure needed for quick adoption of those skill sets. Yes and no. No in terms of it's not really existent.
We'll talk about the infrastructure a little more later, but I want to, because he has to run off now, I want to quickly take him up on this digital skills ambit of the whole conversation. You have heard him. Do you agree? Well, the skills are there, but are they pervasive? Because we have about half of Nigeria's 200 million man population within the youth gap. So we have what the development industry calls youth bulge. Does that youth bulge have what it takes, the digital skill it takes to operate effectively in this ecosystem?
See, if I have to touch on that skill, our educational system, is not ready to churn out the digital skills required to run a digital economy. Because the kind of things we are taught in our various universities, from secondary school and all of those things, are not skills that will drive the digital economy or make us relevant in the digital economy. If you're an entrepreneur and you interview people, you'll be appalled. We are talking about e-health, digital entrepreneur, digital platforms, and all of those things. Take a look at all of this. How many university graduates can you bring out and they will perform here? You are taught historical perspectives to certain issues and all of that. We need skills for today that can drive tomorrow's economy. So it's not like I have to study computer science to be able to do this. No. So you have to train people with the kind of skills and the mentality.
One of the goals, one of the targets of the World Bank's Nigeria Diagnostic Report is that the average 15-year-old should have basic digital skills.
So where's it going to come from? If not from the schools.
They could do it on the internet, like a lot of other people. But I think
if you do not have the basic education, you don't have the nowhere, you don't have the knowledge. Okay, how will you? What kind of things can you deploy? If you give your child, maybe a public school student, a phone, or let me say a high-powered phone, what will he or she do with the phone? Two things are likely going to happen. He said that he or she spoils the phone or keep the phone.
You'll be surprised, actually, with the
young people we have. I'm telling you, no. It's not doing Facebook or maybe doing Instagram we are talking about, but using that opportunity to grow enterprise, to develop certain things. I've been to China, not only in China, so many other countries, okay, where you see that some of these phones that we use are grown and developed just by secondary school students. Our technical schools are dying That is where such skills are born and nurtured.
Yeah.
Our polytechnics are dying. That is where such skills are born and nurtured.
To use the local parlance, you seem to be shaking some very, very serious tables. we have to thank you very much for being a part of this conversation.
Yes.
Dr. Bayero Agabi, President of SECAD. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
But let me continue with you, Mr. Olatero. So this whole ecosystem thing, there's digital government, there's digital private sector, there's the digital citizen. We have a lot of people in all of these, ecosystems. So on the one hand, one of the issues, one of the challenges that the digital report of the World Bank on Nigeria talked about is the fear that the people who will champion the policies, who will run the policies, are not themselves digitally savvy.
Yes, I agree with that because the people that are running it, let's say they are more digital immigrants. So the average young person now, you term them digital natives. It means they're existing in an age where we already have the digital infrastructure in place. So an average 5-year-old, 6-year-old is already interacting with education via tablets, mobile phones. But the older generation are gradually getting into the digital game, But I think what we need to do is, and which I was discussing with my other co-panelists earlier at the back room, is to some sort of reorientate and have like educate the people making these policies and let them see that, okay, look, before you make these policies, these are the impacts, have private sector, have public sector, have
Don't you already have that, like a sit down with government?
Yes, we do, but I strongly think that effort should be put more into this. The government's making tremendous progress in that aspect.
Okay.
I mean, the recently ICT Road Master Plan that was published is a good step in direction. I mean, it shows that the government is actively involved in ensuring that ICT as contributes more to the GDP. And this is around the first time that based on the NBI, National Bureau of Statistics data, the ICT contributed about 13%.
Yeah,
13% to the GDP. It's a huge improvement, from the previous quarter. So we should commend the government. We should commend at least. I mean, this is one of the few governments in place where we see that at the highest level, they are at least showing interest in ensuring that ICT picks up and is being developed. So we should commend them. But there's still a lot to be done. There's still a lot of improvements to be done.
Most certainly. Well, just joining us now is a digital analyst and co-founder of TechPoint, Mr. Muyiwa Matuluko. Thanks very much for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
So first of all, in your opinion, do you think the ecosystem that we have has enough structure, a strong enough structure to support the vision of a digital economy in Nigeria?
No, we do not have. Three primary key elements of the structure of the digital economy are infrastructure, policy, and then research. And in all these areas, these three areas, we are not doing that well. So for example, research, there is no digital economy in the world, whether it's Silicon Valley or whether it's China's digital economy or even India, that did not invest in research and development. And
but that's not to say that we don't have research-savvy civil servants?
Yeah, I mean, but then who's going to fund the research? Because is it private sector? There's only so much the private sector can do to fund research. If you go back to the issue of Silicon Valley, for example, a lot of, many companies can trace many of the Twitters and Facebook and Apple and all of them can trace their history back to government-funded research in the 60s. When you talk about William Shockley and people like Frederick Terman, who were leading research that was funded by government, and government was their major client. Companies like Oracle started off by doing research and working for CIA. So government has that willpower, financial and political, to push. I mean, there's only so much that private sector can do.
Okay, gentlemen, let's look at this from one angle. The word economy is involved in those two words, digital economy. With economy comes money. And one of the issues that a number of people have been concerned about is the fact that, look, from January next year, the online transactions will begin to get taxed. Digital economy is already in force, so to speak. But, you know, many people will talk about the fact that digital finance, we are stronger in the area of digital finance because you do virtually all of your transactions. You can do virtually all of your transactions online, but you have flagged the fact that digital infrastructure is an issue. So I'm just wondering if we are approaching the whole process of this digital economy in the right way. What should come first? There are 5 of these things. There's digital finance, digital entrepreneur, digital platforms, infrastructure, and skills. In what order do you think they should have been, you know, if Nigeria is going to have a visionary digital economy?
I think first infrastructure should come in place, and then the platforms, and then enabling an environment for digital entrepreneurship, which will now power skills, because you can never have relevant skills by just being in school or learning in a silo. You have to like work in the industry so to get that skill. So infrastructure comes first. When you're talking about the internet infrastructure, broadband penetration in Nigeria, depending on who you ask, is anywhere between 30% to 14 to 13%, depending on how you're defining broadband penetration, right? So it's still, I think we're still talking about how the guest earlier was talking about how a lot of our cables are landing in the coastal areas, but they're not spreading. That's because the national broadband policy was not implemented the way it should have been implemented. So that's one challenge. So you solve that infrastructure problem first. Get more people have access to the internet. Before we even start talking about whether or not they can afford, they should have that access, first of all. And then you create platforms that people can use, and then you create enabling environment for entrepreneurship, digital entrepreneurship. Ease of doing business is still a very tricky situation here in Nigeria.
Maybe when it goes digital, it will be easier. But let me come back to Mr. Olateru.
I hear what my good friend Muyiwa says, but I think I have a different approach to it. I think the 5 areas should be developed at the same time. Maybe because I'm an entrepreneur. So I think that development of each of these areas is going to put pressure on development on the other areas. For example, think of digital skills. For example, as at 5, 6, or 7 years ago, if you say you're a developer in Nigeria, you really don't command that much respect, and you agree with me on that. But now, you know, it's because there's a global demand for a lot of Nigerian software developers. It has forced the current administration now, part of the Empower program that is put in place. You see software development is a core critical aspect of it, you know, and this pressure and this demand on global software developers, global companies, on Nigerian software developers is making everybody come to the table to have conversations. So I hear him out, but I think the approach is to say, look, let's have 5 of them play out at the same time. We are all, each of these sectors are going to be putting pressure on the other person to innovate. Because as an entrepreneur, and if you look at all other sectors, banking, telecoms, you know, one sector didn't wait for the other, you know, and it was as a result of innovation in one sector to say, hey, look, we're innovating faster here. Can we have government? Can we bring government in? Because government's role in all of this is very important. They're the regulator. They're the umpire, you know, some sort. So sorry if you could just allow me finish. So I think it's important because we can now say, look, we're innovating here. For example, the fintech space is getting very interesting. You see how CBN almost every time is renewing, is looking at the policies, you know, old policies to say, look, how can we improve with the innovation? Because also we're missing the critical element here, and it's the consumer. You know, that's the digital citizen you're talking about, but that's another element altogether.
I'm just curious because, yes, we're in the 4th Industrial Revolution. This is where disruptive, technologies come in place. And I see you guys smiling because deep down, we got this. I mean, whatever. The government is important, but I know you find ways to in quote, circumvent such that you get the attention of government.
Yes.
But my challenge is this, not with disruptive technologies,
Yeah.
kind of tricky to say. The big question is, how well do we, accept disruptive technologies in Nigeria? Because I understand there are systems in place. I heard about this bike-hailing app, for example, that had issues with some, council and what have you. And it begs the question, we're saying we're getting to the fourth industrial revolutions, but it seems we have these barriers in place. So what do you guys go through, first of all, and how are you handling these things?
I mean, we go through a lot, as you can imagine. A lot of government activities or towards digital entrepreneurs seems to be, like you're talking about, for example, the ride-hailing companies, for example. Each of them are going to have to pay an estimated $503,000 a year. That's 182 million naira a year, because they're going to be paying 500 naira per bike per day. And some of them have as much as 1,000 bikes. And these are people that are trying to solve the traffic situation in Lagos, which is, forgive me to say, is a sign of the failure of government, because infrastructure, the traffic situation in Lagos is because of bad infrastructure. And now these guys have come up and say, okay, this is our own temporary
traffic
solution.
in New York, they will say. And on the other side, they will say that, it's good for government to generate revenue, but please, go ahead.
But how do you generate revenue via rent-seeking policies? Why are you charging, how much do these companies make, first of all, in the first place, that you're going to make them pay 182 million naira a year? And because they're trying to solve a problem that exists. Why can't we find ways to work with them? Okay, you guys are trying to solve this problem. How can we come in? How can we create an environment that will make it easier for you to, while we're trying to meet up with? I mean, we understand, we can see some projects going on, some road repairs. We know about that. But why? And this was not really governments. So it was the transport unions that, and then government just hands off. But government is supposed to be involved in that.
Right. Okay.
You get so
you are opening a totally new vista in this conversation, and I don't think we can go quite far with it, because there is a list, I think about 6 or 7 items that the diagnostic report lists about the barriers to digital economy, but we can come to that some other time. However, Mr. Olaterimi, we want to speak to this. It's from the Nigeria ERGP, Economic Recovery and Growth Plan of 2017 to 2020, that says the Nigerian economy can be more competitive in the 21st century global economy. Its industrial policy must be linked to digital-led strategy for growth. Do you see us driving in that path? Given what was talked about the other time, about the right of way, so many things that government officials seems to put in the way.
Yes. I think we're on the path, but I would like to point out something that we need to. And I see a lot of young people that have disruptive ideas and technology. We seem to not really understand the climates we play in. I don't think copy and paste model works. Copy things from Silicon Valley and just paste it down here in Africa. I think there's so many factors that we need to have a thorough understanding of. So apart from technology, we need to have a thorough understanding of the political landscape. Who are the stakeholders? And the truth is, before we are bringing our disruptive ideas and technology, a subset of these things have been existing already. Okay. Maybe not as innovative, maybe not as transparent, maybe not as sleek, in quotes, or maybe not as smooth, as what we are offering.
But they're already
existing. So you can't just...
You need to pay homage. Is that what you're trying to say?
Well, if you say that,
Maybe just attribute them. But we are completely out of time, gentlemen. But we really have to say thank you, digital entrepreneur and co-founder, Krenet Tech Lab. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
That's Kende Olateru, as well as Muyiwa Matuluko, digital analyst and co-founder of TechPoint. Thank you so very much for being a part of this conversation.